everyone, to the Life Midwest podcast. This is episode 8. Man, I can't believe we're already in double digits almost already. I'm your host, Kevin, alongside my buddy Wes over here.
Howdy.
And man, it's today's a really special day that I've been looking forward to for a while, pretty much since this podcast started. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest for you tonight. I'd like to introduce to you Chris Peapod Daher, everybody.
Hi.
Chris, how's it going, man?
Good. You pronounced my last name correctly, which is that's a good start.
I took a guess.
A lot of people do it incorrectly. So it's Lebanese, and people like make it harder than it is, but it's Daher. It's very simple. And that's why I call myself Peapod, because that's also very easy, but also it's really funny when people spell out Peapod. Everybody tends to write it in 2 words, and it's 1 word, like the vegetable, like the thing you eat.
Yeah.
So thank goodness I didn't name myself something else, or it could have been harder, because God knows what everybody would try to spell it as. But, I'm a loud bald man who calls himself a vegetable, and I am a radio personality out of Toledo, Ohio. I'm also a podcaster myself, and I've known Kevin for a good amount of years now. And I love the kid, and I saw he was on the podcast, and I like to whore myself out on other shows as well. And while I'm breaking my own show, so I decided to hey, I love the concept of kind of discussing life in the Midwest, and it kind of ties in a little bit for my podcast, which is the On the Radar podcast, where I interview musicians. We do interviews and studio performances, all from a Midwestern perspective. And that really means is I get to talk to everyone under the sun, no matter where they are. And just kind of tie it and show, kind of compare and contrast, what's going on in their world and how it reflects some of the stuff that I've witnessed in my few years or so of dealing with music and musical things. I say few years, but I've been in the radio industry for about 11 years now. And
I was going to make a joke and say it's only been a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I've only been in there. I've only done music things for a cup of coffee, whatever. It's nothing. It's nothing. No, I've been a radio personality for 11 years. And I've had my hand in interviewing music and supporting local people doing things and helping give them platforms for most of that time. I want to say a good 7-8 years or so. And I met Kevin through the Toledo, Ohio music scene for a phenomenal band called Stretch. And I've just met all these great people, and I'm so happy that I work in an industry where I have that opportunity to not only talk to and interact with really cool people, but also at the same time, share cool experiences and use my platform for good. Because I feel like more people should do that, especially with everything that has gone on in the past. I don't want to say just in the past 4 years. I wouldn't say decades, because I feel like we've slowly devolved into apathy. And we need more empathy, and that's what I really believe in. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's I guess that's my start. I guess that's my introduction. I guess.
Yeah. No, that's great. We've spent a lot of the first few episodes talking about empathy. A lot of the social science subjects that we've covered, right, Wes, have been they come back to empathy, really. So it's been really, really great. So I know a lot of people are probably wondering, how does somebody who's doing all of these things now, what's their, does their childhood look any different? Does their upbringing look any different? Does that spark when they know what they wanted to do? We'll get into all of that today, of course.
Right.
But I want to start with a question that I know Wes and I asked each other when we did our episodes, and it was kind of how we kickstarted everything. And that was, everyone kind of has that first memory. I don't remember Wes's. Mine was pissing the bed. What was yours?
My very first memory, or no, what was Wes's? Yeah.
I think I was playing with big ass Tonka trucks.
What a first memory.
That or playing a Super Nintendo or something.
And mine's just waking up crying. Like oh my God. All right, Peapod, meet us somewhere in the middle. What was yours?
I believe my very first earliest memory was I don't know how old I was. All I know, I was young enough that my mother was holding me, and I remember being in her arms and she's singing to me, and I was looking up while she had me in her arms in a rocking chair. So I don't know how old I was. I would have to say between the ages of 1 and 2, but that is the earliest memory that I can fondly remember and like burned into my skull. There's just something about that. It's just I came from a very good, very very solid upbringing family wise, and and I'm glad I did, because meeting a lot of people and hearing life stories and everything, and even just witnessing it in my personal life, certain other people who raise their kids or grandkids or whomever, and I look back and I go, wow, thanks mom and dad for not fucking me up too much. So that's good. That's a good thing.
It is amazing, like even within your own friend circle or social circle that you kind of grow up into, like everybody's experiences is so vastly different. Even somebody who lives right next door, and I remember that kind of like blowing my mind as I kind of got older in like my teenage years. Like I think I started to realize that a little bit, and it's very mind blowing and very it gives you a perspective.
Mm-hmm. It's weird being. So I just turned 35 fairly recently. I turned 35 back on January 24th, which is like about a week at the time of this recording, a week ago, and kind of just reflecting back and just seeing like where I've been, like who I've become. Like it's night and day from the person I was, and I think that's a good thing. But also like I also recognize more of my faults, and I've also become a little bit more neurotic, I guess you could say. And I've also become, especially with this pandemic, I've also become just more of I don't want to use the term nihilist, but I can't think of the word right now, but I become more angry towards people, just in general, not like individuals, or just like it's that old term of when your parents go, I'm not angry, I'm not angry, I'm just upset.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's how I feel with everything. Like I just went to the store today, and like we're a year into this nonsense what we got going on. And there's just a dude in the aisle, just straight up, no mask, no nothing, just wandering the aisles. I'm just like, come on, man. Like, I shouldn't be surprised. I am, but I'm like not at the same time, because I'm just so tired of it. I'm just so tired.
I feel like at this point, when you're a year in, like if you're a year into this pandemic, if you're not wearing a mask, like you're just an ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're just an ass. Yeah.
I'm not angry with you, son. I'm just disappointed in you.
and that's how I feel about like a lot of these things. I'm just like, when is it gonna be enough? Like people are still straight up like going, oh, this is fake, or this is this and this. I'm just like, when is it gonna click for you that what is going on is more than just happening in your direct day-to-day life? What your actions are, maybe a drop in the ocean, but your drop has ripples that can affect so many more. You need to realize that you are a space fart in a skin body. That's what you literally are. You know, you are the same stuff that the dirt and the universe is made out of. You are made of the same stuff. So why do you think you are more entitled than anybody else out here? Like, wear the mask, do the thing, do whatever, go home. Like, it's not that hard. It's not that hard.
we don't think it is either here at the Life West. All two of us, the whole team.
all two of us here.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. I it's definitely something that weighs on me a lot. I get anxious. You know what I mean? I try to be pretty open about my mental health issues, and that's definitely one thing that does not help is when you see someone who they just don't care, and
Right.
it's just yeah.
It's just I feel like we've all just evolved into this whole just like whatever. Like, well, no, you shouldn't be like whatever. You should be. I'm a passionate guy. I've always been that type of person. Even when I was a kid, I always would reflect my feelings. I never held anything back. So if I'm happy, I'm happy. You can tell. If I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm angry, I'm angry. And I've never been that type of person to just like sit back and shut my mouth on a lot of things. Now what I do for a living, I end up, shutting my mouth, more, but it's not because I'm holding back because I'm holding back. I'm holding back because I don't want to be fired. I have a life I need to I have a life I need to provide. I have a wife, I have a family, I want to do more. I want to move forward. I want to look good for the, I'm a public figure and I put that phrase in quotations because I don't consider myself famous. I don't consider myself, anything special. I'm just a guy with a funny nickname that talks into a microphone for a living, and people apparently like to listen to it, and that's great, and I'm so glad they do. As you can tell, I kind of don't have a high opinion of myself. And that came from years and years of bullying. But I also just kind of make fun of it. But like, I also recognize what I am. And like in the grand scheme of things, I'm no different than anybody else. I just do something that more people listen or will take my words and they might hold more weight than maybe somebody else. And that's fine. So I'm glad I'm glad my voice can be heard and it holds weight in certain people's eyes. And I'm glad that whatever I do say, if I do have to speak up, hopefully those, because people know who I am and what I've done and everything. So if something does upset me and I do throw my word weight around, if something does affect me and I bring it up to the subject matter, and more people are going to be listening to than some online troll, then hey, cool. Hopefully you take that with stride. But it's just ridiculous. It's crazy. And, I know that better days are ahead now because, we have some a little bit more competent people at a national level. But it's not like a lot of that is going to go away. What the past 4 years just showed is like a lot of people and a lot of ugliness and a lot of problems had to be shown to the light.
Right. And I think that because as long as we acknowledge that it's not going to be an overnight process, it's going to be easier to maintain and not lose that hope. Mm-hmm. So yeah, here's to that. Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about that passion, because I do know you for a very passionate person. Where do you think that came from? Is there a time? Do you feel like you've always been that way? Is there something that comes from?
I've always just been that person that when I really like something, I just really like it, and I just go whole hog. I think it's just how I've been. I think a lot of it while growing up, I was made fun. I was bullied a lot because of physical attributes. I had a lot of teeth problems, not because of lack of doing anything. It was just genetic issues, and my teeth were just fucked up, and it was out of my control, and I was made fun of that. And then people made fun of those, then moved on to my clothes or how I acted and everything. And I really I really had to just like, I couldn't do what I wanted to do. I was so afraid to like break out. So like when I find something that I was really passionate about and I feel in a comfortable space to do it, I got to do it more. I don't know. I can't explain why I'm passionate and why that passion goes through everything and why I'm like that. But at the same time, I'm glad I don't know, because I'm glad I can't like recognize what it is. It's just there's certain things that I've always really enjoyed, and I also recognize that I think those things should be loved and supported more. Like my grandfather is a huge influence in my world, and he passed away like I want to say like 3-4 years ago, and it still affects me to this day. I have and my grandparents on my mother's side is the grandparents that had the huge influence on me, and I have a tattoo on my right forearm that represents them, and I stare at it all day, and I'm glad it's like on my forearm on like the top of it, like when I put my hand down, so I could see it all the time, because I can just see like what their effect was on me. But I remember their effect, and I remember them showing me things like music, and my grandfather telling me stories about the radio, and he used to be in the radio industry himself, on radio advertising for the company Muzak. And if you're not familiar with Muzak, go Google it. You got the internet. He did a lot of good work with that. And I just, there are certain things that like when I like it and I want to share it, and I want to share it with everyone, and I want everybody to be on board with it. So like, yeah, I've always had the things that, when I really like something, I really like it, and I go all in on it. And, and if I don't like something, or, if there's something doesn't like pertain to me, I still will recognize it. And I just, I don't know. I guess it's like my analytical brain. Like I'm creative and analytical at the same time, which is super weird. Like when I think creativeness, I think of like, people make music or make art, or, my wife is a self-taught chef. So she makes all these like desserts or cooks or experiments with food. And like, for me, that's creativeness. But like in the same realm, I create things myself. I'm not physically doing it, but I'm thinking about like, okay, here's a subject matter, or here's this thing. How do you want to present this thing, this idea to the world? Well, I'm decently good at talking to people, allegedly, and I use that to paint word pictures and get people in a mood. And that might sound like me just rambling on and on about it, but it also I'm taking you with me on my process as I show you what I'm trying to get to. So
today, and I'm just thinking like in comparison to like kind of my upbringing and what I've heard from Kevin's upbringing, how much of that makes you who you are today? Has that passion been since the beginning, or has it slowly been fostered through your experiences?
Both. So like I come from a very loving family, but I also come from a lot of like somewhat traditional values as well. Like my father worked a lot, but he's originally actually, technically he's an immigrant. My father came from Lebanon into the States at age 16 and almost went to Vietnam as part of the army, and he finished out his stay in the States, thank goodness. And he's worked, and he's always been a very hard worker, even to this day. But he wasn't really there for like a lot of like moments. And I'm also the firstborn of 4, so I'm the test child. So like my personality, is and my upbringing was slightly different than my siblings. My siblings have always been very social butterflies, always very confident in their stuff, and I commend all of them. My sister, who's recently a mother, it's almost coming up to about, I think, a year of being a mom. met a tremendous gentleman when she was doing work overseas in Ghana, West Africa. And, they met in Ghana, West Africa, and they both got married and they moved back to the States. And now they reside in Boston. And now they have a beautiful young boy. My little brothers, who I wasn't the best little brother, or excuse me, I wasn't the best big brother to them. But they've both turned out to be tremendous young men, and really are going to go at it for a lot of things. So it makes me really proud. But why I struggled socially with things, which is when I tell people that, is really funny because they see me what I do now, and I'm like, this is not natural what I do. Me being outgoing and goofy and interesting and charismatic. This was not an overnight process. This was years and years of me shedding the skin and getting past all the bullshit that I went through. And when people you hear those celebrities, who are like mega hot, and they were like, "Oh, I'm such a dork," when I was growing up, and you just shout TV bullshit. That's a lie. You were top of the class. You didn't have problems. And I'm not saying that you don't know real life. I know real life. I'm not saying like that, but I also said I can recognize when people I can understand if people are struggled socially, and then they're adults and they've got past all that. You have a better centered of yourself, I guess you could say, in the same time. Or you could also be just a giant dick. I don't know people. I'm just a radio guy. The only thing I do know is I know my experiences. I know what I am, and I know my strengths, and I know my weaknesses, and I recognize all of that. And I know I'm striving to do the best I can with what I do. And I always want to do well, and I always want to strive for the best, no matter if my heart's not in it or not. So and I feel like that should be for everybody. You should not be chastised for caring. And I see that from a lot of people, especially recently. It's just oh, your life is fine. Your life is perfect. Or your husband or your wife is, you guys don't argue or whatnot. You guys have no problems. Well, just A, we're not talking about it to the world. And B, even if we're not arguing that much or whatnot, it's none of your damn business. And maybe we just work through it all. We're not gonna advertise it on social media. We're not gonna advertise it to our coworkers or whatnot.
I just think there's so many people who are on social media, and so because they're on there, they think they're entitled to that sort of information or the know-how.
Right. And it's none of your dang business. Don't get me wrong, I'd be curious for certain things about if two people that I both knew and then all of a sudden they broke up, I wouldn't mind to be curious enough to go and wonder I wonder what happened. But that's none of my business, and I'm not gonna pry in it. I'm gonna do what a lot of other people do in breakups. I'm gonna choose my team and I'm gonna keep going. But at the same time, I know, I recognize what I've done, and I recognize where I come from, and I'm glad I have a good center, and go from there. But as much as I made fun of celebrities, I know celebrities all they're doing stuff. They're in the public spotlight 24/7. So I don't know. The world is funny right now, to say the least. And I know, I guess, my place in it for the time being, and I know where I want to go, and I want to know how to do it, and I'm just doing my best,
So, on the topic of none of our damn business, and it's about something you said quite a while back. So you mentioned that you're basically a first generation Lebanese American, correct?
Correct.
How has that factored into how your life has been lived, how other people perceive you? Since our podcast is about studying life here in the Midwest, I feel like that would be a massively important part of diversity that we can show on our podcast this episode, if that's something you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, that's fine. What's really funny is because I'm like the whitest Lebanese dude ever.
I actually had no idea that you were.
Exactly. That's exactly. Yeah. No, and it's funny you say that because that's what I was about to say. Not many people know that I am half Lebanese. My father came to the States and he met a white woman of mostly somewhat not German descent, but of European descent, and lived in the Midwest for most of their lives, and had 4 kids, and so yeah, to be honest, I wish I was more in connection to more of my Lebanese routes, or not routes, but roots. And I wish I knew more. Like, I can't speak Arabic. I burn in the sun. I think that's just genetics, honestly. And it's really funny. It's because like my little brothers and my sister kind of still have like more of a Lebanese, I guess for lack of a better term, tint to them. When they were growing up, when my sister has, longer naturally curly hair. My little brothers, both of them, when they both had longer hair, they had curly, and I was going bald by the midway through high school. And that's why
Which is just as well, because I can't picture you with hair anyways.
Oh my God.
I really can't.
If you Kevin, if you dive back farther enough in my Facebook, you will find some old photos of me with hair.
We're gonna have to dig those up for the future.
I will send them to you. I was like, before and after. This is how it started. This is how I am. And it's really funny because I used to not have facial hair and had hair, and now I have no hair up top, but I have facial hair. So like I'm a real life Wooly Willy. It's not hair, man. It's just magnetic shavings. That's what I just move it around with a wand. But
that's amazing. It looks so soft.
Right? So soft. Anyway, no, the one major thing, and I'm not afraid to talk about this. The one major thing that I actually like, it made me realize, I'm like, holy shit. Like you hear the stories. Okay. So you hear the stories of like, people of color and different races and things like that being attacked or targeted, or business being targeted and everything. When 9/11 happened, my family's restaurant was broken into and trashed a little bit after 9/11. Not realizing, because the people that did it, realize, oh, these people are Middle Eastern, therefore they're terrorists, therefore they're from whatever, they're in the same boat as the people that did, that horrendous act, which, with anybody who with a high school degree and, I don't know, 2 brain cells recognizes that the Middle East is not one place. And the people that did it are from one of the many, many places that is defined in the Middle East. Open a history book, man, to pay attention to social studies, whatever. Geography, get a map, look at it. So, my father is from Lebanon, is one place that the only thing, major things that people talk about is the Gaza Strip and sometimes the constant wars with Jerusalem about the, some of the Holy Land there. And my family's restaurant was ransacked from it. And when I say family restaurant, I mean like my father and his brother and his brother and his nephew, and like they ran a restaurant, a bar in Cleveland to this day, and that was broken into. That was the first time ever that I've actually felt like, I wish I had more connection. Like when I meet other Lebanese people, or like a Lebanese person recognizes my last name, they're like, oh my God, because my last name is like the equivalent of Smith in America. So like, so like Lebanon. So like that was a big deal. And there used to be like also a politician back in the day with the last name of my same last name. I don't know if I'm related, maybe, who knows? But I never bonded with that world of people. When we were growing up, we lived in the white bread town, and my mom tried to make us go to church, and we did until I was old enough to not go to church, and I decided not to do it because I didn't want to. And we never really connected. I never really connected or had a connection with the Lebanese and more of the Middle Eastern world. But I'll go to places and they'll know that I'm Lebanese, and like they'll try to, talk like the same way to me, or like try to speak Arabic, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm the worst. I don't know. So like it never really hit me, even though I am, and I guess maybe it's the time and age where we live in, where people recognize more and better that like you come from, you're the son or daughter of immigrants, you're a person of color, you're almost I guess in a sense you're almost like, I don't want to use the term idolize because I don't think that's like the correct term, but I'm just using that as a broad stroke term because I can't think of something better at the time being. That I guess you're recognized better and people want to focus on you more. And I think that's great. And I think that should be, in a sense of like not necessarily idolizing or, celebritizing things like that. You should recognize those people of different descents and people of color and different, nationalities or gender roles or, sexualities or whatever, but you shouldn't make it all necessarily about that. That's not their personality. They're not whole. Like if you are gay, your not whole thing is, oh, I'm gay, and that's your whole personality. It's so much more than that. That is one speck of the entire personality of you. So, me just being the son of a immigrant shouldn't be always about me being the son of an immigrant. I'm, also, I've done also a lot of other things as well. But I also, it's recognizing those things that are interesting and cool and different, but also not making the biggest deal in the world and not going over and above for no reason at all. It's like the idea of just like, you see kind of like in funny sitcoms and everything where like a black family moves into an all white neighborhood. So all the white people are like making jive terms or whatnot. And it's a terrible trope. Like in the end of the day, they want to recognize that they are on the same, you could talk to them in the same way you talk to other people. I mean, it's kind of the whole reason why the Black Lives Matter movement is what it is, and people are recognizing, they're saying, well, all lives matter. Well, no fucking shit it does, that all lives matter. But at the same time, you're not understanding.
What's ironic is the people who usually shout back all lives matter are usually the ones who don't wear masks. And I just find that to be the funniest thing.
It's just really ridiculous that like, it's just, and I'm always the type of person that likes to, I like to see all sides of the story, whether I agree with it or not. At the same time, I when people shout all lives matter, they understand, like I understand where they're coming from in a sense. Like I'm trying to put my head into their headspace and go, okay, yeah, they're shouting all lives matter because of this, because maybe they don't recognize why Black Lives Matter is being shouted or things like that. And, maybe it's, buzzworthy term, kind of like defund the police. While like it's a very, very edgy, very, in your face type of phrase. But the idea of defunding the police is that money could be split up in better areas. So the police is not the first person that called when something goes down. When a minor skirmish happens, I'm not saying, oh, when someone robs your house, you're going to call a psychiatrist. No, like use your head for a moment. It goes back to that whole, like, that apathy, or like, you're not using fully your brain and everything. Like, think for a second. Do you think anybody out there legitimately, if they were in danger or having a crime or something majorly happens, they don't want a police officer there for some reason? Like, truly think about that. A minor argument, or a homeless person, or someone is doing something else that doesn't necessarily need the police being called. There could have been something else to prevent and help this out. It's just for 1 second, not getting caught up in the things and using your head.
I want to touch on a couple of things that you had mentioned too, as far as like buzzwords. We didn't actually call it a buzzword in last week's episode, or 2 weeks ago actually, but we talked about the idea of universal basic income, and we were kind of it's not that we got nervous to bring up that word, but it's kind of like defund the police. It's like somebody already has that kind of perception as to what they think that means, and that can be scary unless you actually hear someone talk it out. Also talking about how different cultures and different people and walks of life should be celebrated, but we shouldn't identify them by that. That was something we talked about in Wes's My Friends episode. Was, it's very common, unfortunately, that we take the actions of one person and we use that to identify them, but we do it the same thing with people's identity. We go, oh, that's Charlie, he's gay. Like, does that matter?
Yeah.
Like, is that, I mean, sure, like it'll probably come up in typical conversation, but does that need to be the first thing that gets discovered or discussed? Probably not.
It's not the identifier of things like that. Like, yes, we should celebrate, the history and the plights and the things of like people of color, different sexualities and things like that. Absolutely, we should celebrate that. At the end of the day, you don't want to be the same shade of gray, but you also don't want to be so dissonant that you don't have to stereotype it as like white, black, pink, green, whatever. Like, there's a middle ground between the two worlds. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, Wes has some questions for his favorite local radio personality. Welcome back to the Life Midwest podcast. On the other side of the break, it's Kevin alongside Wes with special guest today, the one and only Toledo legend himself, Chris, aka Peapod.
Oh man, I know that guy.
You do?
Yeah, I heard he was a dick.
Worst guests we've ever had on our show, honestly.
Terrible. I don't know why you brought me on.
6 out of 9.
Nice.
Sexual ratings aside, if you're looking for ways to support us, we do have a Patreon that's fully live right now. We really do appreciate the ratings, reviews, subscriptions on your favorite listening platforms. Email us at support@thelifemidwest.com, and if you have anything to say, whether it's nice or not, hey, we still want to hear from you. You can also reach us at our socials at The Life Midwest at your platform of choosing.
So the first question is, why alternative music? Why rock and roll? Why metal? Why the music that would be traditionally played on your radio station? What makes that appealing to you?
So I just want to quickly just correct one thing. That like while I do cover a lot of local area stuff, like the podcast itself is not just strictly for local. It's for like the come up, the upcoming, the bands and the musicians and everything that don't get covered in the day-to-day corporate worlds of radio. And it's kind of a reason why I started it, because I know the world of radio and like what's being played, and then I may not like a lot of that music or I don't understand a lot of that music, not only just rock music, but like I'm also on a classic rock station once in a while, or a pop station as well, and like I bounce around the radio dial a lot, and I recognize what's going on, and I'm like, that's not really necessarily for me, or why is this popular? And then I see some of the stuff that's, on the come up or the underground or in the independent, and I'm like, I like this more, and this is more interesting. So it's just like I always loved music. I always gravitated towards music of all sorts, all shapes and sizes. I wasn't allowed to listen to a lot of music when I was growing up. I came somewhat of a secular home, so like my mother really only wanted me to listen to like Christian, tones of pop and rock and things like that. But when I became older enough and could make my own decisions, and I can understand and recognize what's good or bad with myself, I decided to, explore more, and I just kind of floated to rock because there's something about rock music and that world, and I love the sound and guitars and everything. And even when I've grown over now, because I'm 35, I listen to a range of stuff. I listen to instrumental post rock music. This this wall of sound. I'll sometimes listen to some ambient stuff when I just need to concentrate or I just want white noise background stuff. I'll listen to pop music. I really enjoy recently, like Miley Cyrus and Dua Lipa, and I recognize a lot of that music, and I really like what those women have, and but I also listen to like alternative and indie and emo, and like I even some country, even though country is not necessarily my forte. I've always reflected about the world of music because I'm always fascinated about it, not only just of the actual music, but like the ideas behind it. And it's kind of why I did the podcast as well, because at the end of the day, I'm a fan of this music that these guests are putting out. So I want to know like why they're doing it.
Is there a specific genre that it would just sour your mood if it got turned on?
I mean, country.
I'm very much there with you.
And that's a broad stroke term because I like a lot of folk, indie, outlaw country, southern rock, things like that. But like something about like mainstream pop country about drinking and trucks and women and working in the yard and shit like that, I don't like. But that doesn't mean I don't recognize that stuff, and I recognize why people like it. It's just not for me.
I'm laughing because I'm identifying with your reasoning, but I do listen to some country, but I'm picky with it. Like, for example, I can't stand Luke Bryan. I like Kenny Chesney though. You know what I mean? It's like everybody's different. Right. So
right. Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed a handful of country acts before. I know a lot of like folky, indie, local people that do a lot of that style, and I enjoy that. And just it's that idea of just like I'm every day I live in a world where it's just corporatized. This is what's coming out. This is what you got to play. I'm in like these boxes that I have to stay in. And then when I can leave finally that box, it's like going into a box, closing the door, living in that box. And then when I'm done, I can open the door and close that door and then explore the rest of the world. And that's kind of why, I did the podcast, and that's why I get to do like a special feature on my radio station and like feature like up and coming acts and whatnot. And, show the world that like, hey, yeah, you like this style of music, but have you heard this style of music? And then show them something completely wild and different and interesting. And hopefully somebody will go, wow, that's interesting. I want to know more about it. And then they'll start hopefully the rabbit hole of, that music or those similar artists and everything. And then I just go, yes, go do it. Explore.
I'd have to imagine that that's probably one of the most, if not the most alluring aspect of doing a local spotlight podcast is you're not confined in a box. But that's awesome. That's all really awesome stuff.
Since on our podcast, we like to teach people stuff. Would you be willing to share?
You want to, you do a math class for us?
Yes. Just some quick maths, please. Would you be willing to share with our listeners what steps they could take to either become a radio personality or a podcast personality? I know we've gone over some of the podcasts, but radio is a little bit out of our realm.
So the biggest thing about radio is very interesting. It's not a difficult job in the sense of like physical labor. But it's all about, how do I explain? It's because like I've gotten this question asked before about like, how do I get into radio, or how does one get into radio? And I kind of fell into radio in a sense. But I've learned a lot as I've developed over the years. I would say is, if you are in the world of radio or you want to do any kind of audio fun, so radio, podcasting, voiceover, things like that. First off, it's recognizing what your voice can do. And I'm not saying, like just talking a bunch, recognizing how you breathe, recognizing all the ups and downs, and really break down your voice. A lot of people are like, everybody's like, I hate how my voice sounds. Well, yes, everybody does. But the more you listen to it, the more you can also recognize certain things. And I do have kind of a radio voice or a broadcasting voice, and it's slightly different than my regular talking voice, but it's not too different that it's like night and day. And hey, coming up to the main stage is Brianna or whatever the strip club DJ name, whatever you hear. It's not like that. That's a very old school radio mentality. I don't ascribe to. I don't adhere to. The end of the day, radio is a conversation. Podcasting and interviews are a conversation, so they should just be treated like that. Unless it's like a quick fire, like, hey, tell us about this and tell us about this. And if you're point for time, but if you don't, and you're doing an interview, you're holding an interview, you got to hold it like a conversation. So the same way me and you are talking, it should be somewhat the same way you're holding the interview. Just recognize your voice, recognize what you do, keep working your voice. It doesn't hurt to go and look up some, training exercises on how to, recognize, when people are like talking into songs or whatnot, and, learn about timing, learn about, your one sentence that you're trying to say, try to say it in fewer words. Unless you're podcasting, then you can say it as many words as you can, but make sure you're holding on to the listener in those words as well. Work on, and I'm terrible at this with the uhs and erms and mums, and, work on those and try not to do those as much. Then recognize where the equipment is and make sure you talk in a way that it won't, however you talk, it won't be too affected by that microphone. Learn where the microphone is. Put the microphone voice inside of your mouth, so when you say your P's and T's, you're not making those and things right straight in the microphone. That if you're wearing headphones, you probably just took them off for a moment because it sounds harsh. All that, it's called plosives. Make sure that's on the side of your voice, and just recognize where your voice is, how much it is, and where it is, and just practice like that.
Is there an educational piece that you would recommend? Like, I don't know if it's still relevant today in 2021. My dad was a radio DJ for 30 years, and he went to broadcasting school. Is there still an avenue like that you recommend, or elsewhere?
There are broadcasting schools. I don't not recommend them. And the reason I'm saying the double negative is because it really depends on the person. Like, I didn't go to broadcasting school until year 3 of me being in the radio industry. And I know that I wanted to do more and hone my skills. So I went back to school. I technically also went to University of Toledo and have a bachelor's in communication. So I went to school twice, which means that student loans definitely need to be canceled because I don't want to pay back all that money. And, but in all seriousness, the broadcasting school, I learned some things to hone my craft, but at the same time, it wasn't necessary. But also going necessarily to college, and I originally went to college for engineering, and 3 semesters in, I changed majors because, well, I'm not it wasn't for me. And I decided to explore communication and learn a lot of the background for things. And it did help. And some of those things that I learned in college do apply now. But at the end of the day, it's just go to something that really will fit for you. So if you think college will fit for you better, then do it. If broadcasting school thinks it fits better for you, then do it. Just see what's comfortable, but just don't go into it completely inexperienced and going into a radio station and hired in day one and expect them for you to be doing mornings. Hell to the no.
Yeah, that's like prime time. Mornings are like prime time, man.
Yeah,
that and rush hour, but yeah.
Yeah, basically, it's morning drive is the apex. It's afternoon drive is the second, and then it really is just any time, and then middays is third, which is like 10 a.m. to like the work day, 10 a.m. to 2 to 3 p.m. But everyone wants to shoot for, when it comes to just on air stuff, it's Morning Drive. Morning Drive's the king.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you kind of mentioned that you had. First off, let me say this. So I feel heavily outnumbered here because we have two communication majors in the virtual studio right now. So I just feel completely talentless or uneducated, I should say. But you had mentioned that you kind of fell into radio. Talk about that. Talk about that journey. How did that kind of come to fruition?
I've always been interested in radio. I've always been fascinated by radio. My grandfather was doing radio, and my grandfather wasn't like, you need to do radio, but I was always fascinated by the stories. I've always been interested in music. When I graduated high school and went into college, I originally wanted to do some kind of mechanical engineering because it's like, I like computers. I like this CAD thing I'm working on. Maybe I'll explore that. And I was a smart kid in high school, and I ended up almost failing out of college from being a guy that did get A's and B's and an occasional C to being an academic suspension because of failure of college, because I was overwhelmed. And my family sat me down. They're like, you got to drop all the extracurriculars you're doing or whatever. You got to go back to school. You need to drop the University of Toledo radio station, which I explored and really enjoyed. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I really enjoy that world. And they're like, why don't you just then explore that and do that for a living and, get a communication degree. And that's what I did. And 6 months out of school, I graduated in the spring of 2009 with like a 3.2 in my major. And from being like academic suspension, like less than a 1.0, that's like how far I moved up. And 6 months out of school, I got a job in the job that I am today. Do I think I'll stay in radio forever? I don't know. Honestly, this pandemic has shown me that I'm good at what I'm doing, but certain situations, and I'm not going to go into it too much. Over the years, there's been a lot of management changes, and I've been shuffled around a lot, and I feel like I'm at the point where I want to do more, and I think I am available to do more. But certain, pandemic things or certain management people that have been placed in there that don't fully know my world or history, or they do see me as still the same punk ass kid I was at year 1 or 2 and not year 10 or 11, that I've developed differently. They still see me as, the other way, and they don't think I can handle it. So I'm if an opportunity came about that if I needed to leave the radio industry, if need be, I would, to be honest. If that means I could better provide for my family, and I get a better feeling of the work that I am doing. Not necessarily saying that the work I'm putting out is not good enough. But I feel like I personally, that I've, when you're at a place for a long time and you're not at the head of the table for some strange reason, and it's not because of lack of trying to be at the head of the table, maybe it's time for me to move to a new table. So that's kind of where I'm feeling at right now, I guess you could say. I'm not leaving radio, obviously, but also I'm not going to not entertain. It's a lot of knots, really. It's like a quadruple negative. I do recognize that if something has to happen, and my skills that I've developed over the years can be used slightly better in a place that could benefit me better, and that is not in the radio industry, I wouldn't be sad to leave it.
So what does that mean? What does that mean for the podcast then? Would that continue?
Oh, absolutely, I would.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
I wouldn't drop that. The podcast has been a pet project of mine for quite some time. That was developed when the last incarnation of the radio station I'm currently on went away, and it's really become a world of its own to what I really wanted to. We bring in guests. Whether it's local, we bring in guests that are visiting, like traveling guests. We have them perform studio performances, which I was very influenced by, like the BBC Radio 1 world, and a lot of those and bigger market radio shows that would have live performances in the studio. I really enjoyed those worlds, so I want to put it on a podcast and really explore the music and feature artists and interviews and people on the come up. So yeah, the podcast itself is been a pet project of mine that has really come to fruition, and I get to work with 4 local area recording studios to help develop this. And once people can travel more again, I will have a Rolodex of places and people to work with. But right now, I'm kind of okay with interviewing people over Zoom right now. It's not the same, but at the same time, it's also gotten me the opportunity to interview bigger acts, and I think that's super cool as well.
For sure. And one of the studios that you work with, actually, good well-known buddy of mine and the band's is Pat from Otter Hill Recording.
Yes.
Really great dude. Love his music. Love his passion that he has. Dude seems to know virtually everything there is to know about music and music theory. So he actually did both of Stretch's 2 most recent records. So it's just he always pushed me more when I was doing my guitar takes, and man, just hell of a work ethic, hell of a guy, and just really love the dude. So when I found out he was one of your 4, I was like, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I worked with a gentleman named Steve Warser, who, he's done a lot of like indie alt acts. Recently he just recorded and produced the most recent upcoming Citizen album that'll be coming out. He's done a lot of other, indie alt emo acts as well. He does very well for himself. He was a touring musician himself. And he just got super busy recording people that I had to break away. There was no hard feelings. He just got extremely busy, which is understandable. And I hooked up with Pat, and he's been there for most of the tenure of the podcast thus far. He's been, I think, the longest one with us, with I think like 3 years. Because I did more than that, really, because I think when I first started the podcast, it was like on a monthly basis, and now I've gotten to the point where it's almost a weekly basis, at least towards the end of 2020, because I really just wanted to reach 100 episodes in 2020 and reach that point. But I could ramp it up because nobody's traveling or whatnot, so everybody can just hop on Zoom and yak with me for about an hour, and I play one of their songs, which is super cool. But when people are traveling, I would do maybe 2 to 3 episodes a month, because there's studio performances, and I would want to give times for the engineers to develop. So Pat is one of those people. I work with another studio out of Waterville, Ohio, named Bigfoot Studios, owned by one gentleman, Travis Guyman. Very blues oriented, very folk oriented, very smart dude, very talented, beautiful recording space. And then I recently got hooked up with another gentleman who has a home studio, but it's really nice space, and him and his assistants really knows the vibe and the energy and whatnot when recording, and it's called Laser Light Recording Studio. That's also in Waterville, Ohio, and he does some tremendous stuff as well. And then I also work with 2 guys that have stepped up in Northwest Ohio with their studios, both home studios, that really develop some stuff and really working on their online content and creation and content creators themselves, duo under the name Bike Rack Records. And they've done some incredible stuff as well. So yeah, those are the studios I have worked with, and I'm really excited. And I can't wait when the world's not broken anymore and we can see each other again. So I'm very excited to do more into it.
Awesome. So since we're kind of talking about networking and other podcast spaces, I'd like to give you an opportunity to just plug yourself, plug your podcast, plug any extra projects you're working on, plug your website, socials.
All right, here we go. If you are in the Toledo area and you like rock music, I am on a radio station called 100.7 The Zone in Toledo, Ohio. You can also listen online at toledoszone.com. There's an S in the URL, toledoszone.com. I'm on air 6 to 10 a.m. weekday mornings for my show, Peapod in the Morning. Why is it called Peapod in the Morning? Because I am Peapod and it's in the morning, and naming things is hard. So you can go check that out. When I am not on radio, I am host of the On the Radar podcast. and it's the podcast that features music, interviews, and studio performances from a Midwestern perspective. You can check us all out on all major podcast platforms. We're on all the social media at On the Radar PC, and you can find all those links and where we're at and what we're doing and who we're talking to at ontheradarpc.com.
I've been in radio for 6 weeks. That's the best goddamn plug I've ever heard.
I've definitely done the good work of art and the whole spiel. So when they're like, plug your stuff. All right, here we go. And just go into it.
That was great. Thank you for doing all that. Like I said, I'm sure it's the first time you've ever been asked to do that on a show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's I've like I said, it's my first day. So what can I say?
Do you feel like you go on autopilot when you're doing that? You're just like, okay, play this file out of my brain.
Yes. Absolutely. So like if something happened in midway through, I'll be like, but well, it's one of those, it goes back to kind of the radio thing. It's also repetitiveness, and learn how to repeat things over and over again and still do it interesting. Like, just plugging away from some of the stuff, but like you heard the cadence, you heard how I presented it and how fun it was. And I got to put my personality into it. And at the end of the day, it's a cheap plug for the things that I'm promoting. I'm whoring out, but it was interesting enough that you were like, oh, okay. And you can, and when you're hearing it, I can sense the smile, or I can hear the laughing in the background and things like that. And I just like, I've gotten down to a science because I've said it so many times that I know what hits and what's going on. And things like that. So that's like another late tip on, I guess being in a audio broadcasting world.
For sure. Rhythm and cadence is extremely important.
Absolutely.
Before we get too far into this and start having to wrap up here, I do want to ask you about something you had mentioned earlier, which kind of pertains to like your social battery. You kind of mentioned earlier that you weren't exactly the most social person. You considered yourself not the most social person, and it involved a lot of shedding and and growth to be in your current profession and what you're doing now. As someone who has a lot of mental ailments himself, and I'm sure you probably deal with this all the time, where someone's like, man, I had no idea. People meet somebody with ADHD or high functioning autism. They're like, oh man, I just had no idea. And it's like, there's this perception of a certain way you have to be, in order for you to have had those struggles. I mean, talk about that growing up and what that was like, what that shedding was like.
It got to a point where I literally had to move out of my hometown to really find who I was. I felt like where I lived in my hometown, there was so much baggage, so much history, such bad stuff, to even to the point when after my first year of college and when I had to go back home for the summer, I struggled hard because like it was too many bad memories. It was too many things coming up, too much dirt, too many people knew the me that I didn't want to be remembered as. Not necessarily the real me. It's just like the people that they remember me in my hometown, which every time I still go back down my hometown, like there's like a little bug in my stomach in a sense. I'm just like, there's so much here. And like, yeah, this was like the start and I developed past all this. I should be getting over it, but like, there's still something here, like, a frog in my throat or like, butterflies in my stomach. Cause it's just like, this is what happened here. What happened in this world here is not who I am, what I believe in, who I've become, who I've grown into. So it took me to the point that to literally go to a completely different place that nobody knows me. Nobody knew me. Nobody knew my history. Nobody knew me being bullied. Nobody knew all of the embarrassing things that they can drum up. No, I can literally start from square one again, and I can really develop into who I am. So that's what I had to do. Yeah, do I still struggle with a lot of that, social anxiety stuff and things like that? Absolutely. Do I sometimes have a hard time talking with people I don't know or public speaking? And I absolutely do. I recently had to do a presentation on how to podcast to my entire cluster of my company, which is like 50 some people in our branch, and to tell them on how to podcast and what to use. And that was nerve-wracking as hell, but like I still did it in a way that, some of the older dogs understood, and actually some of them got it all right on the first try of how to set things up themselves. I didn't have to be called on a bunch of times. So I think that, like, at some sort of reason that worked. I still struggle with self-confidence issues to this day, because of years of all of that. But, I've developed better, and I know how to handle it better. And I know, and like I said before, I recognize my faults, and I recognize what I am not strong in and what I am strong in, so I can balance those things in a way that, people can. So, what people can go like, I never realized you were this. Then I'm like, cool. Then I guess the facade in a sense worked, or like my hard work, paid off. It's not me hiding it, but it's also me not making it a crutch,
I'm just sitting back amazed. It seems like our at least education path, and then kind of how you described yourself forming and shedding your previous self is just really similar to mine. Started out wanting to be an engineer, ended up as a communications major, and I had to go to Japan to realize I didn't like my old self. So that was just really cool hearing someone share similar experiences.
And don't forget, you did wrestling for Rikio as well.
Oh, yes. You mentioned you like wrestling, and I wrestled at Rikio. This is super cool.
Wes's Earth 2 counterpart of me. I don't know if we told you this. The multiverse exists.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to throw in and add in, either Wes or Chris before we start wrapping up here?
I appreciate being on. I think this is very therapeutic. I hope the people listen. They can recognize that even the people that are considered a quote unquote, once again air quotes, public figure, or people that are in the spotlight and maybe more well known, can recognize that people are true. And it sounds very douchey at the same time, but like I'm just saying that like we are all the same type of people. We are the human race. We all have our ups and downs, and this is very therapeutic to explain a little bit more about that and talk about some of the issues that are plaguing the world right now. And I don't want to use the word plague, but literally during a plague of sorts. It was really cool to talk about all of this. And I appreciate you guys letting me yak on your show, and I hope for the best. And please let me know, if you have a lull in guests again, I'd be more than happy to jump on once again and help you guys out, and hopefully you guys are successful.
That'd be great. No, we definitely really appreciate it, and much success to you and the wonderful career you've had so far here in Toledo, and hopefully it continues and blossoms, and people recognize you for who you are and what you stand for, and the great discovery element that you seek within your podcast. I hope that continues to take off and be as successful as it has been, and go even further for you. But I really do wish you all the best. And man, I can't tell you how excited I was to have you on today. So thank you.
Of course, I appreciate
it. So coming up next week, Wes, do we know what we're talking about next week?
I don't even know what we're talking about this week. No. I think we're talking. Well, we pushed back an episode, right? Is it communications,
telecommunications, or media? Yeah, because of how dense it was.
I think we might revisit that. I did a little bit more research, and it became more interesting as I kind of conquered how deep it is.
All right. Well, unless we change our minds for a second time in a row on it, next week will be telecommunications or media. Maybe we'll just keep it spicy and interesting, folks. That's since the Midwest doesn't really do that for us right now.
Just do a different episode from what we advertise every week. Gotcha.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, it's been a real pleasure, folks. It's your host Kevin here alongside Wes, and of course, big thanks again to Chris Peapod Daher. Appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you so much.
And we'll see you guys next week. Take care, everybody.
Have a good one.